Braden, you are back.
Yeah.
You are back, and
Choke it up.
we're gonna find out and get some clarity this weekend when it comes to the college football playoff rankings. What's the biggest bitch for you when it comes to the college football playoff rankings? Because I was thinking about this.
Big bitch.
I would like to reserve my right to complain after we get to see the final 12 released and the brackets come out, because I think it's too cool of a setup with the home games and all of that come along with it to sit here and maybe cry and complain like some people are conditioned to do when they're used to the 4-team.
Am I horrible for saying I hope? I mean, I don't hope Penn State loses, but damn, a home game and the perceived bracket we would have to get to the final.
Be sweet.
Well, the problem is, I don't know if you lose, you can guarantee yourself in a home game spot. I mean, I think you'd think that you would, but that's the scary thing about that is like I don't, especially the way you lose.
Well, that would be true. Yeah.
I guess the general point is I don't have a ton of gripes with the College Football Playoff Committee, and I'll get to that in a second. It's more of the scheduling in general. Like we're comparing the strength of schedule for the Big Ten and the SEC and the ACC and the Big 12. And not every conference plays 9 conference games. So you kind of start there for me where you go, okay, a 9-3 Bama team, are they 9-3 if they have to play additional conference game? I don't know. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. Maybe that only enhances or strengthens the argument to be a part of the college football playoff. So it's tough because, look, we get the chance to go around the country and see different teams in person. And there's two sides of this conversation. There's that's why you play the game, right? That argument, the most recent game I was at, the game, Ohio State, Michigan, is a prime example of, well, this is why you play the game. Because even though Ohio State's a 20.5-point favorite, they get beat at home and physically dominated by Michigan. So that's why you play those games. Now, that being said, when I see Michigan, when I see, Ohio State, Penn State, these Big Ten teams compared to some of the Big 12 schools we saw this year, is there a difference? Yeah, there's a difference. There's a difference in the trenches. Maybe the skill position players a little more even. Maybe you say the quarterbacks, all right, a little more even, running backs, etc. The difference is in the trenches. You see it on the offensive line, defensive line, each side. And that's kind of hard to be able to judge in a box score and sometimes when you're watching tape or watching highlights. But that's where the championships are won and lost. Look at the recent history. Look at Michigan. Look at Georgia. Look at some of the teams that have been able to win. It's arguably because of oftentimes what they do up front. So my gripes aren't against, the ACC, for example, where the athletic director for Miami and the ACC, commissioner Jim Phillips come out and they hammer the College Football Playoff Committee, because I think these people who are a part of the committee have a really hard job. When it was 4 teams, someone was going to moan about, not being number 4, and it was probably 5 and 6. Someone probably had a case then. Now it's 12, and everyone's supposed to be excited about it. Instead, now we're ticked off that, hey, it's Miami who's sitting in the 12 spot right now, but that means they're basically not a part of it. And mostly because a lot of people out there, and I've been trying to say this the entire season, don't understand the format of the actual playoff. So I don't have many gripes with the way the rankings are. I have more questions, like Miami can't possibly move up. It feels like it's impossible unless there's maybe a bunch of upsets or something. But even then, Ward Manuel's talked about not dinging teams who lose in the conference championship weekend, which is probably not the smartest thing to say, because if you go back through, the history of the college football playoff, granted 4 teams, they would talk about the fact that they're going to every single week reevaluate these teams. And it almost seems like they're allowing the story that's already been written on most of these teams to kind of dictate why they are where they are. So I look at a team at Miami and I say, that stinks, man. Now, you could say, hey, just beat Syracuse and you're in. Beat Georgia Tech, you're in. And that's fair and fine. But there's, they got 2 losses, and they're looking at teams, like Alabama, and they look at other teams that are trying to make a gripe and say, oh, we should be in instead of them. I look at SMU, and that's the team I probably look at and say the committee could be the most unfair to. because they're in a position now where if they win, obviously they're in. But based on how it's set up, if Clemson wins the ACC, they'll be a 3-loss conference champ, and they will automatically go. And then that leaves you at SMU with 2 losses. And how far do you drop? We've seen some teams drop as much as 8 or 9 spots in one week's rankings. We've seen some drop on average about 5 or 6. So that would drop SMU out. And I think if you're a part of the, crowd that says they don't have any ranked wins, you're right. They don't. The ACC has not been as strong as some of the other Power 4 conferences. But how are you going to tell that team that, has only lost 2 games the entire season, I guess 3 in this case, that they shouldn't go ahead of a team like Bama, who wasn't playing in a conference championship and hasn't won as many games? It's just, I can understand the difficulty of making these decisions, but it feels like no matter how much we expand, there's always going to be people ticked off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like college basketball goes from, 32 to 64. They add in the play-in. They've got the 68 teams that are qualifying, and then people are complaining
still bubble
about
teams still got snubbed.
And it is weird that SMU in a weird way would almost be better off. They're risking almost everything by playing this weekend. It feels like, because if they lose that game, all of a sudden they're going to be asked out, and people are going to be looking at potentially Alabama getting in over them, and then Alabama causes all the controversy and complaining as getting one.
But
of
that's
those
why you play the games. Isn't that what you led off with?
Yes, but also this came up. One of the guys from Barstool actually said this back when Ohio State was playing Indiana, when it was a thought that Indiana wouldn't be a part of the playoff, and the comment was, if you forfeit, the NCAA registers it as 1-0. So if SMU just forfeited to Clemson, they would lose 1-0. Which in that event, yes, they'd have another loss, but it'd be a tight one.
Wouldn't be a bad loss.
That was
exactly.
That was
Wouldn't be a bad loss
game,
at all.
Exactly.
They were in that down to the wire.
That's interesting.
So you could try using that same logic in this case
with
too,
Penn
and say,
State.
They shouldn't play.
With Penn State. Hey,
With-
Oregon,
with
y'all go
any
ahead.
team.
Y'all go ahead and take it. Y'all go ahead and take it. We're going to take this 1 point loss.
Crazy. We had this flight delay, couldn't get there.
It does. I was having this debate with a buddy a couple of days ago. It does call to question, though, in all seriousness, when you bring that up, LaVar, if Penn State plays this game, maybe they get host a home playoff game. Maybe they don't. And also you risk potential injury of your players. I mean, if you really look at the path, you'd almost rather be a team that doesn't play in a conference championship game and can host.
Absolutely.
Which, I hate to admit this, but that's exactly how it works for Notre Dame. In the
Hey, listen, man.
By the way, I'm not just saying for this year.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's always kind of the path they have to go. And it's, to me, the smartest path because...
Of course it is, Domer.
Well,
of course it is.
If conference championships are conference championships meaningful now? Like you have to seriously ask that question, because if it's all about winning a national championship,
then
how
what does it
meaningful are
matter?
those conference championships?
I agree with you, just and obviously because we won the conference championship and didn't go to the playoff at one point. So I would agree. Like, what does it matter to win the conference championship and you took a team from the conference that didn't win the conference championship, and the team that did was left out? Now, granted, that was when it was 4 teams, but nonetheless, that was when I was like, okay, conference championship, like, great, we're Big Ten champs. Big Ten champs that are sitting home watching a team that didn't even play in the game. They weren't even considered to be one of the representatives of the 2 best teams to see who was the best team in the conference. They weren't even in the game, and they're in the playoffs. It's just like, so for me, yeah, I mean, I changed my opinion on conference championships once we realized that conference championships didn't guarantee that you would get in, especially Big Ten. Like a Big Ten conference championship, that's not guaranteeing you to get into the playoff. So that was when I felt the way that I felt about it. I know, there were discussions and debates, that I actually thought made sense, but ultimately came back to the idea of it didn't make much sense to me in the end, using logical reasoning, saying that why are you playing a conference championship? And why do you crown a conference champion if the conference champion is leapfrogged by a team that wasn't even in the game? So, yeah, I mean, I think it's for bragging rights this year personally, because I can't believe, like, this is honest God's truth. I had the idea and the thought process of what you just said, Q, the trenches. The trenches and the weather are going to be the two reasons why Pac-12 teams that came to the Big Ten are going to falter. And I give Dan Lanning and Coach Tosh, I give them all their credit and in the world for being able to prepare their team week in and week out to be able to deal with what I call a black and blue conference. You're going to beat each other up. I've always said if you see us losing later in the year to one another, it's because we beat each other up once we started conference play. If you see us lose in the bowl game, it's because we've beaten each other up and you're limping into the bowl season. This year, I'm sitting there saying you're going to have to go through the same type of changes we've gone through, and they've done nothing but rise to the occasion every single week that they've played. So,
would you rather this Penn State-Oregon game for the Big Ten title be outdoors than indoors at Lucas Oil?
I don't care.
Let's throw that bad boy at Soldier Field.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
15-degree weather and get this
like
thing
that,
rocking.
That game we played in last week. God dang. But it doesn't matter. This still, to me, is a matter of the conversation of now it looks like it was a tremendous idea to go after the schools that they went after and bring them into the Big Ten, because not only do you have a successful approach to having both coasts interested in this game, right? You have both markets, both the West Coast and the East Coast interested.
Tell that to the
this
ticket
game.
sales.
Well, I mean, is it bad? Are they bad?
It's not good.
I bet you the ratings will be pretty good. I bet you it'll be a watch.
Okay, let me ask you this: how much do you think it is to get into the game right now?
Regular ticket?
No, just to get in, like the cheapest ticket you can get.
Yeah, cheapest, it's like maybe $60.
$12.
Yeah.
Well, that's crazy. That's crazy.
60
I think there's going to be interest. I still think it's going to generate interest because Pac-12
$60 you'll get a couple plays.
Well, I think Pac-12 people will be interested, and I think that's why you do this in the first place, is to extend your footprint.
Can I be honest, man?
Yeah, go ahead.
Pac-12 people will not be interested. Like here's the reality is.
Dang.
We've seen it. It is sad because we've seen it through the ratings this year. It's just the West Coast does not draw. And I know that pains you guys to hear this because you're in LA and you think it's a big market.
I'm not from here.
Well, I know, but people like to try to defend it. It's like, oh, okay. Well, why don't we just go look at the ratings to see if you guys like to watch? Yeah. It's like people like to spout off about it and talk about it on Twitter or X, on social media. Okay, well, you're obviously not watching because the ratings don't come along with your outcry that you care and you want to support all this stuff. It's just different. It's different in the Midwest. It's different in the South. That's where college football rates. It doesn't rate on the coast. It doesn't. I mean, some would say that that's the whole debate why Miami's in and Alabama's not. Is because Bama's a brand. They're going to rate. As of right now, they would probably play Notre Dame on December 20th at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Up there, Alabama, Notre Dame, to kick off this 12-team expanded playoff, the first round. You don't think that would be bonkers ratings?
Yeah.
I mean, not saying that Miami wouldn't be a little better, but it's Bama. It's got a different feel to it. So, by the way, don't be surprised if that matchup doesn't end up holding out. We'll see.